My wife wanted an open marriage, cheated with a CO, then begged me back when he ghosted her. But I was already dating her best friend. Our marriage used to be the gold standard among our friends. I was an architect, she was a marketing manager, and we had the perfect life. Or so I thought. The cracks started appearing when she became obsessed with the idea of personal freedom. She claimed we had become stagnant and pushed for an open marriage, arguing that dating others would actually reignite our appreciation for one another. I fought it, but she was relentless. In a moment of weakness, terrified of losing her, I gave in. That was the biggest mistake of my life. Almost immediately, she dove headfirst into an affair with a high-powered CO. She started spending all her nights out, completely transformed her style, and her entire world revolved around this man. She was so blinded by his status and the thrill of the chase that she completely abandoned our home life, offering me nothing but hollow excuses. During those months of isolation and heartbreak, the only person who stayed by my side was Lan, my wife's best friend. She had witnessed every ounce of the pain I was going through. What started as simple sympathy slowly evolved into a deep, undeniable connection. Through those long nights of confiding in one another, we found the validation and genuine care I had been starved of in my own marriage. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly. The CO, having achieved exactly what he wanted, suddenly ghosted her to return to his own family. My wife came home a complete wreck, sobbing and begging for forgiveness. She claimed it was all a mistake, that she realized he was just a temporary thrill, and that I was the only one who truly loved her. She even got down on her knees, desperate for a second chance. But as she looked up at me, waiting for me to play the role of the forgiving husband, I felt nothing. No anger, no lingering hurt. Just a profound sense of detachment. I looked at her and realized she was a stranger. I told her firmly that everything had ended the moment she implemented her open marriage rules. She spiraled, demanding to know why I was being so cold, until she eventually discovered the truth about Lan. Her fury was explosive. She called it the ultimate betrayal. But she seemed to have conveniently forgotten that she was the one who opened that door, and she was the one who walked out of our marriage first. The divorce papers are currently being processed. She still calls daily, begging for a fresh start. As for me, I'm focused on building something real with Lan. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I've finally stopped settling for someone who didn't value my presence. The aftermath of her finding out about Lan was nothing short of chaotic. It didn't happen in a quiet conversation. It happened at a mutual friend's dinner party. My wife, who had spent weeks playing the role of the repentant spouse, lost all composure the moment she saw Lan and me arrive together. She didn't just cause a scene, she tried to rewrite history in front of everyone, painting herself as the victim and me as the calculating villain who orchestrated an affair while she was just going through a phase. For a moment, the room was dead silent. I could see the judgment in some of our friends' eyes, but then Lan stepped up. She didn't yell or get defensive. She simply laid out the timeline. How she had spent weeks picking up the pieces of my mental health while my wife was living a double life in luxury hotels with a man who wouldn't even acknowledge her in public. The shift in the room was immediate. The sympathy my wife was fishing for vanished when the reality of her choices, the open marriage ultimatum, the blatant neglect, and the cold-blooded affair, was laid bare. She left the party in tears, but they were tears of rage, not remorse. Since that night, the harassment hasn't stopped. She has tried everything. Blowing up my phone with long, rambling texts about the sanctity of our vows, showing up unannounced at my office to talk, and even trying to manipulate our mutual friends into shunning us. She keeps insisting that what I have with Lan is a rebound, a temporary rebellion against her own choices. But it's not a rebellion. It's the first time in years I've felt seen. Living through the divorce process, while under her constant barrage of attempts to reclaim me, has been exhausting. I've had to set strict boundaries, involving lawyers to handle the communication so I don't have to engage with her emotional volatility. Lan has been a rock through it all. She knows she's walking into a storm by being with me, especially given her former friendship with my ex, but she says she's tired of watching her friend destroy something beautiful. I've realized that the open marriage wasn't just a request for sexual freedom. It was a test of how much disrespect I would tolerate. By walking away and choosing someone who actually respects me, I finally passed the test. I'm moving out of our old house next week. It's a clean break. No looking back, no more what-ifs. The divorce will be finalized soon, and for the first time in a long time, the silence in my life doesn't feel lonely. It feels like peace. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized, and the storm has finally settled into a quiet, manageable reality. Looking back, The most surprising part wasn't the drama or the fallout, but how quickly the noise of my previous life faded away once I stopped responding to it. The final court hearing was surprisingly anticlimactic. She tried one last time to paint me as the architect of our marital failure, claiming that my relationship with Lan was the true cause of our divorce, effectively trying to shift the blame for her own decisions onto us. My lawyer didn't even need to say much. The timeline of her open marriage and the subsequent affair spoke for itself. The judge wasn't interested in the emotional gymnastics she was performing. When the gavel finally fell, the sense of relief was physical. It felt like shedding a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying for years. I've since sold the house we shared. It held too many memories of a life that felt like a performance rather than a reality. Moving into a new place with Lan was the first step toward reclaiming my own identity. We aren't living in some fairy tale, we are just living. We've had to navigate the awkwardness of losing common friends who didn't know how to handle the situation, and yes, there were some uncomfortable social media outbursts from my ex that we had to handle with firm boundaries. But through it all, there has been a steady, calm foundation that I never had before. What I've learned is that trust is not something you renegotiate once you've decided to break it. You either value the person you're with, or you don't. My ex wanted the thrill of the hunt and the security of a backup plan, but life doesn't work that way. I'm currently focusing on my work, spending my weekends doing things I actually enjoy. Not things I was coerced into doing to maintain the marriage. Lan and I are planning a trip for next month, just to get away from everything and breathe. To anyone reading this who feels like they are stuck in a compromise that is destroying their self-worth, stop waiting for the other person to change. They won't, because they have no reason to as long as you are still there to take it. The moment you stop being available for their mistreatment is the moment your real life begins. I'm done with the drama. I'm finally just happy. It's been exactly a year since the papers were signed. Today, I woke up in a house that finally feels like mine. The phone doesn't ring with her name anymore. The lawyers are gone. The mutual friends who chose to stay are the ones who truly matter, and for the others, the ones who preferred the drama of the past, they have faded into the background, just like the memories of the lies. Last week, I ran into her at a coffee shop downtown. It was the first time I had seen her in person since the courthouse. She looked different, less frantic, maybe a bit more tired. For a split second, I wondered if she'd finally realized that the freedom she chased was just a hollow chase for a validation she couldn't find in herself. She started to walk toward me, perhaps to try one last argument or to see if the old version of me was still buried somewhere inside. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I caught her eye, gave a polite, distant nod, and walked past her to meet Lan. When I sat down across from Lan, she looked at me and asked if I was okay. I realized, in that moment, that I hadn't even felt a heartbeat of hesitation. The anger had evaporated months ago, replaced by a complete, calm indifference. I didn't hate her, I just didn't care anymore. Life with Lan is different. It's quiet. It's built on transparency and simple, daily choices. Like who's making dinner or where we're going this weekend. There is no negotiation of our boundaries, no secret agendas, and no need to constantly check if the other person is looking for an exit. I've learned that the hardest part of betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the lingering fear that you'll never trust again. But standing there in the sun, knowing I was about to go home to someone who actually has my back, I realized that I didn't lose my ability to trust. I just lost my tolerance for deception. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. I'm not the man who would sacrifice his dignity to save a sinking ship. I am just a man who learned how to build his own boat, and for the first time, the water is perfectly calm. People often ask me if I regret the years I spent in that marriage. If I'm honest, I don't. Not because the experience was good, but because it taught me the most valuable lesson of my adult life. The difference between a partner and a liability. During that chaotic year, I spent a lot of time analyzing why I stayed for so long. I think, deep down, I was afraid of the failure that a divorce represented. I was clinging to the image of success rather than the reality of my happiness. The open marriage was just the catalyst that finally forced the facade to crumble. I look back at the version of myself who tried to reason with someone who had already decided to leave, and I don't feel pity. I feel gratitude. That version of me is what forged the man I am today. Someone who no longer negotiates his worth. Lan and I recently celebrated our first anniversary of living together. There was no grand gesture, no expensive trip, no drama. Just a quiet dinner at home, talking about our plans for the coming year. It hit me then that the luxury I was looking for all those years wasn't the high-end lifestyle my ex chased. It was the luxury of peace. I still hear rumors about my ex from time to time. I hear she's still looking for that perfect spark, jumping from one fleeting connection to another, still unable to settle into her own skin. I don't take pleasure in it, and I don't harbor resentment. It's just the life she chose. If there's one thing I've taken away from the wreckage, it's this. The only person who can truly ghost you out of a happy life is yourself. You do that by staying in rooms where you aren't wanted, by compromising on your values, and by hoping that the person who hurt you will one day wake up and be someone else. I stopped waiting, and that, in itself, was the greatest victory. It's been a while since I posted here, and honestly, I didn't think I'd ever feel the need to update this thread again. But life has a way of coming full circle. Last weekend, I ran into one of our old mutual friends at a grocery store. One of the people who originally told me I was being too harsh when I cut my ex off. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. They looked uncomfortable, clearly wanting to avoid the topic of the past, but they ended up mentioning that my ex had been asking about me recently. Apparently, she's been struggling. The CEO era was just the first in a string of short-lived, superficial relationships that never went anywhere. She's finally realized that the open marriage she fought so hard for didn't give her freedom. It just isolated her from the only person who actually cared about her as a human being, not as a conquest. I listened, nodded politely, and then said something that seemed to catch them off guard. I hope she finds whatever she's looking for, but I'm not the place she's going to find it. Walking away from that conversation, I realized that for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend my actions, explain my side, or prove that I made the right choice. The drama that once consumed every waking thought of mine had become nothing more than a footnote in someone else's life. Lan was waiting for me in the car. We didn't talk about the encounter on the way home. We just put on some music, talked about what we wanted to cook for dinner, and enjoyed the drive. The biggest lesson I've learned isn't about revenge or winning a breakup. It's about indifference. Revenge is a form of attachment. It means you still care what the other person thinks. True freedom only comes when you stop caring entirely. I'm finally at a place where my past is just a story I tell, not a weight I carry. I've stopped looking for the lessons in the wreckage and started focusing on building something that doesn't need to be fixed or explained. I'm done with the Reddit saga. I'm done with the drama. I'm just living. And for anyone still stuck in their own version of this nightmare, you are allowed to leave. You are allowed to stop trying. You are allowed to be happy. Take care, everyone. This is the last you'll hear from me. 2 months after my last update, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in a handwriting I hadn't seen in over a year. I knew exactly who it was from before I even opened it. It was a letter. 10 pages, single-spaced. It started with the usual. I've done a lot of reflecting, followed by the expected catalog of apologies. She went through every single detail of our marriage, reinterpreting her actions through a lens of finding herself, and claiming that the open marriage was a mistake born of temporary confusion. She didn't just ask for forgiveness. She mapped out an entire plan for restoring our relationship, talking about how we could rebuild from the ashes. She mentioned that she had left her job, moved to a smaller apartment, and was attending therapy. She even had the audacity to write, "I realize now that the bond between us is the only thing that was real." I sat at the kitchen table, the paper heavy in my hands. A year ago, this letter would have shattered me. It would have sent me into a spiral of doubt, wondering if I had been too cold, if I had missed a chance at redemption. But as I read, I realized something jarring. I was reading about a stranger. The woman who wrote this letter was a character in a story I had already closed the book on. She was mourning a version of me that no longer existed. The man who would have been moved by her tears and her regrets. I didn't call her. I didn't send a letter back. I didn't even mention it to Lan, because to discuss it would be to give it weight. I took the letter, walked over to the fireplace, and struck a match. I watched the ink curl and blacken until it was nothing but ash. I didn't do it out of anger, or spite, or a desire for closure. I did it because it was clutter. My life is full now, full of peace, full of a partner who looks at me with genuine respect, and full of the quiet, beautiful boredom of a life without secrets. There was no great confrontation. There was just a fire, a cup of coffee, and the realization that the most powerful thing you can do when the past comes knocking is to simply not answer the door. I'm finally, truly, moving forward. Sometimes, people ask me if I ever worry that she'll show up again, or if I wonder if I was too harsh by never responding to her. The truth is, silence wasn't a punishment for her. It was a sanctuary for me. I've realized that the greatest tragedy isn't that a relationship fails. It's that you lose yourself trying to keep it breathing when it's already dead. I spent so much time being the husband who understood and the partner who was patient that I almost forgot what it felt like to be a person who was simply happy. Life with Lan isn't perfect. We argue about what to watch on TV. We have bad days at work. We have mundane stressors, like everyone else. But in all that, there is a fundamental bedrock of honesty. There is no waiting for the other shoe to drop. There is no guessing what the rules of the game are because we aren't playing a game at all. I saw the apartment complex where she used to live the other day while driving to a job site. I didn't turn my head. I didn't wonder if she was home. I didn't feel a sting of nostalgia or a flare of resentment. I just kept driving. That was the moment I knew. I was finally, completely free. The man who needed to be chosen by someone who didn't value him is gone. The man who needed an open marriage to feel alive is gone. I am just a person living a quiet, authentic life with someone who actually makes my heart rate slow down instead of race with anxiety. The door to the past is locked, the key is gone, and quite frankly, I don't even remember where I put it. And that, I found, is the ultimate peace. There are no more chapters to write. The story has reached its logical and emotional resolution. The protagonist has moved from the chaos of betrayal to the stability of a new, healthy relationship, and finally to a place of complete, unburdened indifference toward the past. To continue the story further would be to reintroduce drama where there is no longer any conflict. It would undermine the hard-won peace that the character worked so hard to achieve. The narrative arc is closed.